Give Senator Gray. Folks, we are meeting on Monday to get through things. Because that's pretty much drop dead. So, but right now we are live. This is Senate Finance and we have a majority. First item is 472. That is the miscellaneous agriculture. Excuse me. I told Michael O'Grady we didn't need him. I don't know. I think Senator Starr has talked to almost everybody, but he's done something with some. Is it students that do research? And they're going to research, and the dog ladies didn't contact him until like late yesterday. But there's nothing that he wants us to change in this bill. So there was nothing else in this bill, and I know that they're really anxious, the farms and fairs people, the fairs and expo people are really anxious to get it out. So I would love a motion to approve, and I'm trying to think.
So there's no changes whatsoever to here?
No, and I'm trying to remember what the fees were. Let me see. There's expenditures. Let's see if my thing is charged enough so I can get the bill up.
There's no fiscal note on page 472.
No, I don't think there was anything in there.
I feel comfortable with what I recall.
Yeah, let's see, they were in
Can you just scan the bill to make sure there's
Tuesday or
no
Wednesday.
change? I mean, I don't remember being.
Okay, here's Michael. And he has a section by section. All right, fairs, agricultural fair, timely applies for grants and submits. Really agricultural food, meat processing, they would be called processors, not meat cutters. Weights and measures. That might get to us because there's a fee, but this is just, they're extending the time. That is all kinds of apiaries. Oh, soil amendments. That was one. We're going, yeah, you're gonna do the sales tax, you're including hydroponic growing. No, so that might take that out of the sales tax. It's not just soil, it's the liquid stuff you do. Yeah, that I think was the big one.
Was the, I think, installers, remember nursery stock?
Nursery
So
stock,
landscapers who quote unquote install
that's right.
nursery stock were now going to be.
Yes, so there would be.
What I'm struggling is I can't, is there a Senate Ag amendment to this bill that I'm just not finding?
Let's see, we've got as passed by the House. And then, yeah, draft 1.1, that's economic development. Yes, that is, they put the secretaries, it took out his or hers and put in the secretaries. That's gender conforming language. Yeah. No, they didn't do much of anything. The big things for us were requiring that people that install plants also have.
Install.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Yes, plant
In your job,
installers.
like implants.
Yeah, they
Yes,
have to get a nursery license
right.
and then,
So that would bring in some extra revenue, but we could lose some revenue on hydroponic
fertilizer.
fertilizer growth medium. So I believe it was a de minimis,
And there's a loss.
yeah, and none of it is particularly. Okay, committee, what is your pleasure on this one?
I would move that Senate Finance report favorably H472, an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects.
It's
This report favorably.
Yes, report favorable, that's advocates, so here's your sheet. Okay. Ready? Senator Gray has moved that we report H472 favorably. It's an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. I am seeing that. Senator Hinsdale, I don't think you voted, so I'm seeing that as 502, right? That means 7. All right.
Report.
Okay, great. That's Senator Bray will report. Now, okay, we're waiting for Damien. And we've got 10 whole minutes. I don't think I've got anything else to tell you, except we are meeting Monday. Let's try.
This we end the floor, whatever.
I'd say 1:30, yeah. We're trying to get some resolution on childcare, but I'm still also waiting for the Barry Tiff bill, which now has salt.
So I talked to multiple people, and they said salt's on childcare.
Has she moved it on
That's
childcare?
right.
Maybe it is. Maybe that's what she's thinking is we want salt, so we'll,
But you know better than me, that's just what I heard some people also.
okay, that may be where it is. I don't know. Then why hasn't she sent us the Barry Tiff bill?
It's construction on the very Buckley Road.
Yes, it's just the bike path that's been done away with. Why we put a bike path in the Barry Montpelier Road, I have no idea.
Sport.
The time on the very tip bill with all the veggie stuff, you were saying something about maybe putting the veggie extension on a different bill.
The veggie extension needs to go, or it ceases to exist. I think we all know we need to do some work on veggie, and we had a rather pointed discussion with Abby Sherman where we confirmed her on in economic development. But if they're not sending us proposals until the last 3 days of the session, there's no way that we're gonna do it. And I've told her that. She's told me she doesn't want to see veggie end in July. So I don't think the miscellaneous tax has the federal hookup. And I've told her we put the bond bank stuff on. It's really clean miscellaneous tax this year. But I don't want to let it go till I know what they're sending me.
So the 3 most important things I see in S94 that we don't have yet is the veggie extension, the Barry tip extension, and the Hartford tip extension.
Oh, that's right, they put Hartford on there too. We'll put them all on miscellaneous tax if she doesn't send it to us. And I know they don't want to do committees and conference, so we'll see. I don't know what they're at this point kind of holding things hostage so that we're trying to get through what we've got to get through. And, okay. All right, Michael will be back here at 3:30. He's gonna leave at 4:30. All right. We still have 10 more minutes.
I mean,
We have 10 more minutes.
I've been amendment to S195, excuse me, H-158, letter of redemption. Or save that until we do
Yeah,
that.
Michael's coming. I've been trying, the concern seems to be making sure that the infrastructure is in place before the plug gets pulled and all kinds of new bottles come in. Leadership doesn't want us to do a check back a la S5. So,
Even as of S5, check back, it doesn't mean anything.
so anyway, it does. I'm trying to think, and Sandra Bray, see if you think of some way,
You have the best perverse sense of humor, I
he
know.
does. Some way we could have somebody like Secretary of Natural Resources or something, send a letter to somebody saying the and Michael, actually, I ran this by Michael O'Grady. He was here on his, make sure we didn't meet him for the ag bill. He said we could have a report back to the legislature 6 months before the plug was being pulled or the trigger being pulled. And then if the infrastructure really had hit a snag. And there's also, I'm not at all sure that I would see 3 redemption centers as a minimum. Because if I've got Barry and Montpelier, is the Sugar Bush Valley or the Plainfield Cabot area going to get shortchanged if I only have to have 3? And right now, Peter Hirschfield was in yesterday. He has a 25-minute ride to Barry for recyclables.
I hope he doesn't go to Barry only for recyclables.
Why else would you go? I mean, there isn't a grocery store in Barry. That's been a major problem to downtown Barry. I mean, part of the problem is you don't return things where you buy them.
Well, so that my curious answer, besides you could get great pizza while you're.
You can get great pizza, but
Is
that's.
that you, I don't think most people, I'm not gonna talk about how people behave, it's all speculative, but the bill has a minimum, as you point out, of 3, and it also is for any municipality of 7,000 or more. So some areas will have many more than 3.
Right. Well, if you only have to have 3, and Barry gets one and Montpelier gets one based on size, and Stonegate gets one.
So
But that's not in this county, though, but where, so if you only have to have 1 more.
you don't have to, but I think they're in terms of like a minimum, but let me get it.
But you've got a 15-minute drive.
Well, there's a reasonableness requirement, and so someone could say, well, what do you mean by reasonable? And I think part of what goes on is that A&R reviews the plans for meeting the reasonableness criteria, and a PRO could be required to create more redemption opportunities.
Okay, I think the anxiety is 3. 1, that the PRO won't be there. The big question is who's in charge? Who's gonna make all those national producers get together and set up this PRO? Who calls the meetings?
Yeah, well,
A&R.
Who didn't show up in the same limo to testify at one time, they're always getting together.
the motivator is you can't sell if you don't register. And
Right, so you gotta register. Some of them may well pull out, the small, organic, juicy people. You've gotta register. And you've got to do what else? Contribute to or set up the system.
So registration of products starts, so I should pause and slow down. That the first half of the bill, all the way through 2027, is all about improving our current redemption system. So no expansion of things, but in anticipation of it, the registration starts, so that they could turn the switch in 2027. Meanwhile, there's PRO forms, the ANR has to review those plans and approve them. And one of the criteria is to make it convenient to redeem.
Okay,
I guess, how convenient? That gets into a,
if I'm an older person that depends on a walker to get around, and I live in an apartment, it's a different convenient than the person that drives a pickup truck. And a lot of those folks in walkers are living in single wides.
they're already facing this.
Right, but now I've got twice as many bottles. I might not
yet.
Not yet. I might not drink soda, but I probably drink water. And it's very convenient for me to have a bottle and, all right? But, no, I just want to know who says that everything is set up before the trigger is pulled?
Well, ANR has to approve a PRO's plan.
But what if they don't?
What if they don't?
What if the PRO plan,
So this is where we get to the part that makes Senator Brock so happy, that ANR can, well, I can use the language itself.
I would feel better. A&R is an organization. I would want to make the secretary of A&R.
So it says, if no producer responsibility organization is formed, the secretary shall either require the formation of a producer responsibility organization or adopt and administer a plan that meets the requirements of section 1532. So that's the whole description of how it has to run in this title. If the secretary administers the plan under 1532, the secretary shall charge manufacturers costs of plan administration, agency's oversight costs, and recycling market development assessment of 10% of the plan's total cost to be deposited into the solid waste management assistance account of the Waste Management Assistance Fund for the purposes of providing grants to develop markets to recyclable materials. So ANR has both approved the plans, and if they don't approve of the plan,
Then they put one in.
they put forward.
What happens if the
And then there's
producer, who calls the first meeting with the producers? Who's responsible for seeing that the plan gets?
on or before January 1, 2024, manufacturers of beverage containers sold or distributed in the state shall apply to the Secretary of State to form a producer responsibility organization to fulfill the requirements of manufacturers under this chapter. So it's those who manufacture that have an obligation to apply.
Okay, so that's a company located in Kansas. Right, how many
It could be, it could be a beer manufacturer
in Vermont?
in Vermont. Or it could
Okay,
be
but
a
that's our
national-
local breweries. What if Budweiser doesn't register? What happens?
or they-
Declare a national emergency.
They're already, Budweiser's already in.
They're in Vermont, but this says they have to apply, and we've got to get to Damien. And we will have this discussion until we fix it.
Okay.
Okay, and you already have a fix it amendment.
I haven't had it.
Okay,
I'll send it to.
and it may be, okay.
Is it true?
So we are
To officially
going,
designate the New Hampshire
back.
Economic Development
this is what
Authority as
happens when
sponsor
you
of
give
bill.
us 10 unorganized minutes. We are back, Damien is here. And this is miscellaneous workers' compensation amendments, and Damien, come on up. I've assured people that I don't think we're going to rewrite the workers' compensation rule. So, And here comes the workers' compensation people. But there's there's fees or changes in.
Yeah, and there's, so there are some workers' comp changes. They're actually not changes, but it's the annual rate setting for the administration fund. And then there's also an unemployment provision, which will bring additional employers into the unemployment system, so they'll be paying unemployment taxes. So those are the two tax-related provisions in here. So the first one, if you look at section 1, so actually I should say I'm looking at the 37-page draft 3.1 of H217.
So bottom one on underneath.
Yep. So the draft 2.1, the changes in that are relatively technical. So I'll mention them in passing at the end, but I'll stick to the main amendment right now. So draft 1 is our annual rate setting for the workers' compensation administration. So there's a surcharge charged on direct calendar year premiums for workers' compensation policies, and also on losses for employers that are self-employed. So you're self-employed, you're not paying premiums. So at the end of the year, you pay a lower rate on your total losses from the year than other employers pay on their premiums, because your premium is ideally lower than your actual losses would be, but who knows? So, so the rate's staying at 1.5% for the direct calendar year premiums, and at 1% for self-insured. No change from last year. And this funds the Department of Labor's administration of the program. The Department of Labor, basically they resolve disputes between employers and employees and oversee the program to make sure it's operating.
But these are private insurance, except these are private insurance policies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so even if you're a self-insured employer, many times you'll have a third-party administrator like the state does, where we're self-insured, but the claims are all run through the administrator. Section 2 is also related to that rate. As many of you will remember, in past years, we've had some close calls with this rate being stuck in a bill that had a poison pill in another section. And we had to do some quick movement at the last minute to get the rate across the finish line to make sure that we funded our workers' comp program for the next year, because it doesn't have a separate federal funding stream like other DOL programs. This puts in a fail-safe language that says if we don't enact a rate change or a new rate for the year, it just remains unchanged from the prior year. So that's all it would do. Most years it doesn't change, so this would actually essentially provide adequate funding most years.
I know that Senator Siraki tried, I think more than once, to just say, why are we doing this? I mean, we approve it every year. It's about the same. It may go up a tenth here, down a tenth there, but.
Yeah, every biennium that I've been in this building, the Senate has proposed to the House that the legislature stop setting this rate every year. So this year, this seems to be the compromise, that the legislature still theoretically can set the rate every year, but if the legislature doesn't, it defaults to the same rate. So it's just when you need a change that the legislature actually
Won't
needs to
ask
have.
for anything unless they need a change.
Yeah, they're still supposed to report to us what they need for the next year, but the good news is that with this language, if it's the rate needs to stay the same,
You won't need.
you can include the language if you want, but you don't need to. So section 3 relates to benefits discontinuances, and it's just repealing the sunset from a trial that at this point, everyone's in agreement that that should stay. It's been a 7-year trial run with that provision. Section 4 relates to the pre-authorization of benefits like durable medical equipment. And I should say that the parties here, the insurers and the workers, have reached agreement on the remaining sections here. So these sections were something where they worked together and took out certain pieces and reached a compromise that made it through the other committee.
Yeah,
So-
there's been a lot of negotiation and compromise on this bill.
Section 5 adds clarity around work search requirements for when you're partially disabled and your employer doesn't have light duty work that you're able to do. Section 6 corrects an issue in the partial, so for workers who are able to do some work but are not, so they're partially disabled. If you were a low wage worker, because of the way the formula was structured, you would actually get less money if you returned to work. So like your total between workers' comp and income was going to be less than you made for staying out of work completely, and this corrects that issue. So fixes that issue. There's also a change in the dependent benefit, which is the first time in 35 years or 40 years that that's been increased. And that is a 5-year trial. So there's a 5-year sunset on the increase. Part of what the other amendment here adds is a report back from the Department of Labor on the cost. So the administration has been concerned about the possibility that this would lead to increased costs for employers. So it's being given a sunset where the increase in the dependent benefit would go away.
And this wasn't heavily negotiated, probably the most heavily. This was the,
Yeah, this was one of the big pieces.
right,
And so that covers sections 6 through 9. All cover that for temporary partial disability and temporary total disability benefits. And just for clarity, when I say temporary benefits, that's for when you've been injured, but you haven't reached the end point in your recovery. Permanent benefits are when you've reached the end point and you're either able to work, and so you get permanent partial disability, or you're unable to work and you get permanent total disability. Section 10 is language clarifying the cost of living increases. So it's not actually changing existing law, it's clarifying existing law because of confusion that had been out there among practitioners about when a cost of living is due or cost of living increase is due. The other changes in that section are all technical style changes. Section 11 is clarifying when you can get attorney's fees or costs if you bring a dispute to the department when a claimant is eligible for attorney's fees or costs. Again, it's codifying existing department practices. It's not actually changing anything. Section 12 is just rulemaking. So again, no fees there. Section 13 is switching us over into unemployment insurance. Section 13 is adding definitions of son, daughter, and child and spouse that are inclusive. So they reflect adopted children, children where the parent may stand in place, where the person stands in place of a parent, but may not have gotten legal custody yet, something like that. Section 14 will affect the revenues of the state. This will extend the unemployment insurance requirements to nonprofit employers with fewer than 4 employees. Currently, if you're a nonprofit that has fewer than 4 employees, you are not subject to unemployment insurance. What happened during the pandemic was that Vermont has many of these nonprofits, and many workers were unaware that they weren't eligible for unemployment insurance and then lost their jobs during the pandemic. And so what this does with a 1-year delay is it extends unemployment insurance to those nonprofit employers. And then the following section is technical cleanup in the language governing one of the two options for nonprofit employers. So your first option is to pay the unemployment taxes. Your second option is to not pay taxes, but to reimburse the cost for the state of any benefits that are attributed to wages you paid. So they look back at the last 5 completed calendar quarters. Usually it's the first 4 of the last 5. And so if you pay wages to a worker who becomes unemployed during those quarters, you're responsible for reimbursing the proportion of their benefits relative to the proportion of the wages. So if you paid 20% of the wages in that period, you reimburse the state for 20% of the benefits. That also caught a lot of nonprofits off guard during the pandemic. And so this clarifies and cleans up the language. It cuts about a page of redundant and language that refers to things that happened 40 plus years ago out of the statute, and then consolidates the rest of it and uses more clear language. It doesn't actually change the law at all. Section.
Just a question on that section.
Yep.
It occurs to me, after we dealt with this, if the nonprofit goes out of business, I assume the state collects nothing,
If there's,
unless it's some residual.
yeah, if there's some residual, then the state may still collect. If the nonprofit merges with another into a larger nonprofit, the liability travels. But if the nonprofit just disappears, goes completely out of business, there's no funds, then that cost, as I understand it, gets socialized to the trust fund. So there are instances, same thing with employers. You have unpaid taxes and the employer goes out of business, and the state will try to recover, but if there's nothing there to recover, then the cost gets socialized. So Cameron Wood could talk to you more about that, but it's built into the system with the way the tax rate self-corrects as the trust fund goes up and down. There's some expectation that you'll have overpayments to claimants that weren't eligible, and that you'll have some under collection too. So.
But the big one here is requiring not-for-profits to be subject to the unemployment tax, or they have to take that. The other route was there, wasn't it, beforehand?
Yep, reimbursable has been we are required by federal law to provide that option to nonprofits. So for small nonprofits, they'll have the option of paying no additional taxes, but just needing to budget for the possibility. And that's what Section 16 is about, is the Department of Labor working with the League of Cities and Towns. Municipalities are also, we call them reimbursable employers because they'll reimburse for the costs. And Common Good Vermont and United Way of Northwest Vermont, and then any other interested stakeholders, which could be other large nonprofits or small nonprofits that have experience, to develop information and guidance for what the options are, how to plan around the options, and so forth. Because that was one of the things that, coming out of the pandemic, we realized a lot of nonprofits struggled with the planning around how do I make sure if there's a recession, I don't run out of money to actually operate because I've had an unexpected $20,000 expense because I downsized a few years ago, or I had employees leave for another employer and now they're suddenly unemployed because they got laid off. And that's what Section 16 is about, and it's part of why there's a 1-year delayed effective date, because it allows the outreach to happen, it allows the nonprofits to budget and plan, and that was something the nonprofits asked for, is both of these sections.
Are religious schools included under unemployment?
Yes, they would be included as nonprofit entities.
Okay, so that's, I had a constituent during COVID who called, who had worked for a religious school and was told she didn't have any unemployment insurance.
My understanding is that they're covered under,
I would assume they would go in as non-for-profits. I just wondered if there was, why else they would have. an
so there is an exemption for clergy. Yes. So let me just pull up this statute really quick. So employer specifically excludes it excludes certain employers of domestic service workers. Let me just see.
I want to look at that, since we just allowed domestic service workers to unionize.
Yeah, so let me just find the right section here. Sorry, it's a huge
You don't have to do it right now.
subdivision, but yeah, like farms, certain farms are excluded, and so
Okay, that's interesting.
yep, domestic service, independent contractors, service for the US government, service for work for a family member. Yep,
Okay, I just,
yeah,
because
there,
I got that, and then I had at least one very upset professional who was
Oh.
self-employed, who was very upset that he did not qualify for unemployment, and you haven't paid. And fortunately, the feds bailed us out because, no, and I'm
yeah.
feeling he was one of the ones that would boast about not paying.
So I do need to correct my testimony on the religious employment. So employment, as that term is used in the unemployment statutes, does not include work in the employ of a church or convention or association of churches or an organization which is operated primarily for religious purposes and which is operated, supervised, controlled, or principally supported by a church or convention or association of churches by a duly ordained, commissioned, or licensed minister of a church. This language should probably be updated to use a term
I would
besides
think, I mean,
church.
especially since religious schools are now getting or eligible for aid. But yeah, just because you work for a church, and some of them are very large organizations, if they fire you, why shouldn't you have some protection?
Yeah, it's a bigger question. I
Yeah.
need to look at the federal law because what we're dealing with here is there are federal exclusions and federal requirements.
Okay,
And then there are certain federal exclusions where states are given flexibility to decide to cover those and others where we're not. So nonprofits is one where the feds say you have to cover 4 employees and up. You can choose to cover 3 employees and less.
okay.
So we would need to look at that a little closer. Another thing to note too with schools is if you get laid off and you're likely to be rehired the next term, you can't collect unemployment.
Oh, that's over the summer.
So yeah, it's over the summer between semesters or
Right.
terms.
And now we.
So that also affects, every year we get inquiries from people who are laid off by a school district over the summer and then rehired the following fall, and they are not allowed to collect
I've
over the
got
summer.
staff here, at least when I started, could collect.
Staff here
insurance
can,
Over the summer,
they still do.
yeah.
So it's part of the budget. All of our seasonal staff, when they're laid off at the end of the session, are eligible for unemployment. So, every year it's part of the budget for legislative staff is paying out. We're a reimbursable employer, so we budget for those payments in quarters 2, 3, and 4.
Similar to construction workers who get laid off.
Yep.
Okay,
So, turning back to the amendment. So the section 16 is that outreach to help the nonprofits prepare, and they've added outreach to the municipalities at the request of the League of Cities and Towns, because a lot of our smaller municipalities also struggled with this during the pandemic in particular. And so they thought additional information would help. Section 17, for those of you who remember, we had a compromise that the Senate had pushed for, Senator Sorokin in particular last biennium, where there was $100 million in supplemental unemployment benefits, additional unemployment benefits paid out to workers, which was in trade for a change in the taxing formula that saved roughly $400 million in additional taxes that would have been caused by the completely abnormal year of unemployment that we had at the start of the pandemic, just the way the formula works. When I drafted the effective date for that, I made an arithmetic error. Section 17 corrects that error so we don't undercount the amount of benefits paid out. So just make sure that the actual agreement is maintained. Section 18 is a study added by the House to look at adding to good cause reasons for unemployment if your employer doesn't lay you off. Things like fleeing domestic and sexual violence, losing childcare, having to care for a family member. Some states do this, other states don't. We have no idea how it would affect our trust fund. And so this is a report back on potential impacts before we take a further look at that. And then section 19, we do have a separate related program for domestic and sexual violence survivors. It's not well publicized, so section 19 is just a section to report back on efforts to improve knowledge of the program or awareness of the program, and a look at what's worked and what hasn't, and potential additional steps. And then section 20 relates to the same thing, directs the department to work with law enforcement and victims support groups to increase awareness of the domestic and sexual violence survivors program, which basically pays out benefits equivalent to unemployment benefits if you leave your job to escape domestic violence or sexual violence. And that's it for the bill.
Okay. So our real focus is, actually, setting of the rate is a traditional focus. And then the expansion,
The expansion of unemployment, it'll increase the revenues to the state potentially.
but it'll also.
But it's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be a wash for the trust fund.
Yeah.
So it's not going to affect the balance of the trust fund in a significant way. And it may increase the revenues to the state slightly for the number of nonprofits that decide to be taxable rather than reimbursing.
Okay. Yeah, it's predicting human behavior.
Yep.
So our real thing is setting that trust fund and then agreeing to the compromise, which said whenever we don't do it, it'll go forward at the rate it was the year before.
Yep.
Committee. That's looking for this. What is your pleasure? Questions, comments, motion? Are we awake? Yes.
Just quiet.
I know, these are exciting topics. You should spend all morning on them. They were pretty exciting. There were some strong compromises that happened, and this is the resulting bill. And Senator Gray.
So I know we've been discussing things, for instance, terminology or something, but are you looking to making changes while the bill is here, or
No.
intend to just have discussed it?
No, I haven't.
Then I-
Our jurisdiction is really that.
Yeah.
fee.
So then I would move that on the finance report favorably, H217, an act relating to miscellaneous workers' compensation amendments.
Okay, Senator Bray has moved that we report H217 favorably. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. I've got that as 403. 1, 2, 3, 4. 403. Would anyone like to report that?
You deal with deals
We
with
just have to.
all the time.
So remember, I didn't particularly like the piece about the family.
Oh, I know you
Did I
did.
just miss
You
the
did.
boat?
Voted with some reluctance.
Oh, okay, Senator Hinsdale is here. Okay, so we've got
I'm a yes.
502. And I can report this. Okay. All right, that is,
These used to be much more contentious before Sarata became the secretary. Now that since he's left, they've been smoother.
don't encourage them.
No, it seems like many of the things that he,
But he may come back, you know.
it brought him to these events have been worked out and seem
Yes.
to continue to be worked out from year to year to
Right.
year.
He was a tenacious fighter for the
Yeah.
workers.
I'm used to
And
a
I,
few phone calls before the rule to do it was implemented.
I would like to take a look at that exclusion for religious. This, I mean, I'm assuming that might be colleges. It seems like as you work for a religious organization, you should have some, maybe when everybody was clergy and you've got a lot of just regular people working there, I think they should get the same protection, or there should be an alternative protection.
Do you want that as a formal research request, or do you want to just get back to?
Well, I
this?
don't know, how much research time do you, I'll talk with Senator Hinsdale and
Okay.
see what we can come up with.
Sounds good.
Because it seems like that should be looked at, that's awfully broad.
It does. It seems like prayer should not be the salvation for workers' comp, people who work for religious.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
fair.
Okay, so we are going back to our favorite, H-158. And
It's so heartwarming to see you from all the way around calling it your favorite. Makes my heart sing.
I have never just left it, I wanted to work. Okay,
You get her, just work full of her. And will they give you cash, which is just as good as money.
I'm a legislator, I get nothing unless I fall down the steps in the line of duty. I do get workers' comp if I fall down the stairs. I don't know, if we're here on Monday, do I get workers' comp if I fall down the stairs? Okay,
Building varies by schools.
yes. All right, we left off, with Marcy Gallagher. Marcy's here. Okay, Marcy, come on up, just introduce yourself for the record. Tell us a little bit about your expertise in this area. Represent, and then we are off.
Alrighty. Good afternoon, everybody. Marcy Gallagher. I'm the environmental advocate at BPERG. I have been working on the bottle bill since 2019. I'm very excited to be here today speaking in strong support of it.
And
Oops.
Yeah, I am
Okay.
going to share my
Yeah,
screen.
there you go. Okay.
All right. Great.
Okay.
Well, again, thank you for having me. And
Yes. Cedarburg bought one up. I've got this one.
This way, we picked that up.
Oh, wait, you left here to take miscellaneous.
I have this.
Okay.
All that thing.
I don't know where you went, but you left here
No,
with it.
I forgot there's the second sheet that I don't know if they have it back.
Okay, yes, we should be back with the sheet, so. Sorry, this is
I'm
technicality.
here.
It doesn't count if we vote until it goes upstairs, so.
Heard. Well, yes, H158, the bottle bill. I do want to say, I believe that this bill addresses many of the concerns that not only have been discussed over the last couple days, but that also I'm sure you've heard over the last several years. And I do think that there's been some witness testimony that really,
VCRG is essentially a lobbying group, right?
yeah, we're a consumer advocacy, environmental and consumer protection advocacy group. I think some of the witness statements you've heard have been really based on previous iterations of this bill and not really acknowledging the solutions that are embedded in this legislation. So I'm going to walk through some of those and how they impact various stakeholders. And I will start with consumers. So you all, I'm sure, have heard from some of your own supportive constituents thus far.
You do send out very effective forward mail.
Yep, and individuals that we don't tell to contact their legislators too, because 83% of Vermonters want to see the bottle bill expanded. That was per a poll done 2 years ago, but a poll done 10 years before that showed the same thing. Not a VPIRG.
Okay,
Not
I'm
us.
just wondering, and
Yeah.
that's a huge percent.
Could you cite that? Where is that
Yeah.
poll?
Yeah, so VPIRG did commission a poll per an actual polling agency, and I can get that.
Okay, yeah, because I've never been polled, so usually I get swept in with the 83%.
Yeah, and I'll also say anecdotally, in 2021, I spent the entire summer knocking on doors across the entire state and found even higher levels of support of Vermonters that want to see this happen. And yes, Vermonters do want to see more convenient redemption access, particularly in places like Montpelier and Burlington, where I live, and we are not serviced by a redemption center. This bill does do that. And it's particularly the issue is that redemption centers just aren't profitable enough right now to be able to open up in places like Burlington and Montpelier. And in general, across the state, they're closing down instead of opening up. And this bill was really designed to reverse that trend. And so I want to discuss some of the concerns that have been raised by redemption centers and retailers. And I've done a lot of surveying of redemption centers. I've spoken to dozens and dozens over the last 3 years. Most don't
What
just.
are TOMRA?
Yeah, TOMRA is the third-party pickup agent. They're the ones that are contracted by the beverage manufacturers to
These are the commingled bottles,
all bottles.
all bottles.
Yeah, so right now, the commingling group and every beverage distributor or manufacturer who is not a part of the commingling group all contract with TOMRA to pick up their containers from redemption centers.
Okay, but are we hitting up local wineries and breweries in this?
Yeah, you also breweries are currently included in the program and they contract with TOMRA to
But
pick
not wineries at this point.
wine, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think the point here is that no one in the state goes and picks up their own cans and bottles from redemption centers. They all pay someone to do it for them, which right now is just TOMRA, but in the past, manufacturers like Coca-Cola have run their own separate trucks and there's been more competition, but as of today, it is just TOMRA, and so that's why you hear their name invoked so often, because they're really the only player doing that right now, which could change with the modernization of this program, but that's just the way it is right now. But redemption centers are struggling, as you may have heard already. A lot of them aren't sure that they're going to stay in business. Most are really strongly supportive of this.
Well, I think what we heard is the ones that are in business are a little nervous about being forced to buy $100,000 machines.
Yeah, so I don't think that's an accurate representation. So most redemption centers will not have to purchase those machines. What's more likely is that the PRO would invest in those high technology centers geographically distributed across the state, and then the smaller redemption centers would then have their materials trucked there. But yeah, it's no redemption centers think that they're going to have to get those machines. They definitely will be able to handle the increase without those machines. And again, I've spoken to probably close to 50 redemption centers, and the vast majority specifically want to see these changes, including those that were very concerned about the expansion back in 2021. And now knowing the other provisions in the bill that are intended to help redemption centers are feeling a lot more confident about those. And so that includes things like ensuring more regular pickup of containers by Trauma, which is a huge concern. You've also heard about the sorts of, putting brands in different containers. Brand sorting would be eliminated under this bill, so.
So they wouldn't have to pay somebody $19 an hour to sort bottles.
Right, they pay someone $90 an hour to work in the redemption center, which is great, I really support
Fine,
workers
but
being
you have
paid.
to have 3 people to sort bottles.
Right, exactly. So it would be a lot more efficient. They wouldn't have to have as many workers doing this job, even if they didn't have the technology. It really significantly saves time as well as space, because they don't have to have the boxes filling up their whole floor.
Well, I'm saying you're doubling the amount or the kinds of bottles. I don't know, I'm feeling you may be more than doubling the number of bottles.
Yeah. So
Anyone, so they're gonna need to double the space or double the pickups.
So they'll need double the pickups. They won't need, well, in terms of storage, it's double the pickups, but in terms of space of how they're sorting and
Well,
brand wise, they will need much less space because we're eliminating brand sorting
right,
with this version.
what about right now?
Yeah.
I have to go to Barry. I go in with my big bottle and I'm told that it's a half an hour at least waiting line to get my bottles redeemed. Barry's a big place. Once there's double the number of bottles, that's, I mean, have you got a half an hour? I mean, will you figure a 15-minute ride there, 15-minute ride back? Then I gotta go out to leave my household garbage out 5 miles out to the farm out there. How are we going to make it so they can
Yeah.
yeah,
Have you
get double the
those
number of
things.
bottles through without doubling the length of the line?
Right,
I
so
think that's a concern.
there's 2 things in this bill that will help that. One is getting rid of brand sorting. The redemption center worker, instead of getting the Fanta container and having to look around and think, where is the Fanta container that I have to go put this in? There is no brand sorting.
Okay, but when I'm standing at the counter,
Right, so the line will go
they've
quick.
got to count how many bottles I've got and how many nickels you owe me.
Right.
And if it's double the number of bottles,
I think what I'm trying to say is right now, a lot of the time that you're having to wait is because they have to sort the containers by
at the register,
right, well, as people are bringing containers in, they can't just leave them there, they have to go and sort them. But the other thing is that this bill makes sure that there are more redemption centers and redemption opportunities. So you no longer would have to go to Barry, and consumers would have more choices for where they have to drop off their bottles. So not everyone would be flocking to the same few redemption centers that can stay in business in this really
okay.
difficult business
So we'll
model.
get to how we're going to require that a private business open up.
Right, and it isn't just private business. I think as Senator Bray was mentioning the other day, it could be big technological centers, and you heard about Ethan's Redemption Center, but that could be funded by the PRO, not by a private redemption center. So
Right, I think that's, yeah, I'm standing in the line down here and I get annoyed.
yeah,
That's not going to encourage me if it's connected with a store to do further business with that store. You know, they have a real incentive to put things through quickly. Or they can just, but we have to make sure that it works economically.
Right. Right, and again, the big machines, which would not be purchased by every redemption center, but might be 1 or 2 per county, you just drop your whole bag of cans and bottles in there, it sorts 100 cans and bottles in 1 second. So that's not something you're having to stand and put them in and it spits them out.
Is that what they have in Morrisville?
That's what they have in
Oh,
Morrisville.
he said you could put 150 in through in 10 minutes, so I thought you were sitting there feeding.
No, you dump your bag in, it happens all at once, so it's
Okay.
really
At night prior, you open the door before the bag in, close the door.
Okay. I'll take a field trip.
So one major change that this bill does that I think was not specifically acknowledged yesterday is that there is an exemption for small and medium-sized retailers, all retailers under 5,000 square feet, which is actually pretty big. So, I've been hearing, I'm sure you've been hearing for years from mom and pop grocers and others that they just aren't set up to take bottles, they don't want to do it. Exactly. So for the first time in 50 years of this program
I
existing.
don't have the room. When I did my kitchen, I have 2 bins. If I have to put in 2 more bins to hold, and I have a good sized kitchen, people living in an apartment don't have the storage area.
Right.
And given what we're doing with housing and smaller living establishments, so we're gonna have to make it so that those bottles can go out conveniently.
Right.
And when we put in wine bottles, which are by necessity heavier
Mhm.
than regular bottles, I've got a whole block downtown of elderly people living on 2nd and 3rd floors with walkers. I've got to make it so they can carry what they have to the redemption center in Barry. And right now, that may be on the bus.
Well, yeah, and again, with this bill, they will now have a redemption center in Montpelier, and it's not just. I agree, but this is what we need to
Yeah,
see.
it is what
We
we
need more redemption centers, and right now, redemption businesses are not profitable enough.
There used to be one in just about every town
Right.
around here.
Mhm.
Barry is now it. I'm told the church has a shed over in Waitsfield that you can throw stuff in, and they redeem it and fund their soup kitchen or something with it. But for actual redemption centers, we have been going in the wrong direction for a
Absolutely.
long time.
And right, Senator Bray's committee last year, this is what they were hearing over and over again, and so they created a working group, and those folks came together and thought, what's the best solution for this problem that we're hearing? And this PRO model is what folks came together, this is our best chance of increasing consumer convenience, adding more redemption centers, making them more profitable, and actually allowing the system
Were
to
the
thrive.
producers on there?
Yeah, so Bree Beatley, who you heard from yesterday,
No, I mean, with the producers part of the working group that agreed to this plan.
A year ago,
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember who,
well, Bree represents the beverage industry,
okay, and she was on there?
and she was on there. Yeah, this is actually their
Okay.
model.
Okay.
Beefberg was initially hesitant to be on board with the model where producers are running the system because historically, Coca-Cola hasn't always looked out for the best environmental interests, but ultimately we also agreed that this was the only way to benefit consumers through increasing redemption options. And be
that's gonna, by way of reassurance, there's no increase of how many things you handle at home. It's just a question of where they go when they leave.
But right now, they pick up my trash and recyclables on a regularly scheduled cycle. I don't have to go any further than my driveway, so I can empty my bins out and put them down there. most people, many people don't have garages or back sheds, or empty rooms. And if I have to drive 25 miles like they do in large numbers of towns in the winter, I'm not gonna make that drive.
Sure. Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
So we had front and center a year ago, and again this year, the whole thing of making, and we said our ultimate goal was make it as easy to redeem as it was to buy. That's kind of an ideal. I don't think it's gonna get it. Who knows how close we will get. But also just on the whole recyclables waste stream, before we started blue binning and single streaming and curbsiding, there was, that program wasn't, someone invented that program in response to a law that said we're gonna handle these materials differently. There are opportunities in this bill to handle redemption differently. And it would honestly be a big surprise to me if people didn't find sort of new business niches to handle the redemption more conveniently, just like we handle recycling more conveniently.
So I have more to say too about redemption centers, but I just, wanted to note that retailers will be exempt no matter how far they are from a redemption center. So I think that solves a lot of issues that we've heard over the last several years. I do also want to note that the 15-minute driving provision that was noted yesterday is not in this bill. That was in a previous iteration.
It's not in this bill.
No.
Okay, so then it will be acceptable to have to drive a half hour each way to redeem.
If you live in a house that's 15 minutes from the main road, then yeah, it's pretty likely you'll have to drive more than 15 minutes. Those folks are also driving that far to go to the grocery store.
Is it when you go to get your beverage,
Yeah,
and the container is full, you have to drive that same route?
but but where I buy it and where I redeem it are not necessarily the same place. And they could easily be on opposite ends of the main route.
And I think for rural Vermonters, that's common. I can buy a bottled beverage 3/4 of a mile from my house, but to redeem it, I've got to go 5.2 miles.
I think if the issue we're trying to solve is that we want more access to redemption, this is what this bill is doing. I think that we're all agreeing, we want there to be more redemption centers. We are only going to have fewer redemption centers if we don't want, that's just the trend we're going on, because the handling fee is set in statute and redemption centers can't pay their workers more, they can't find workers. So again, I love the discussion about having more redemption centers, because I live in downtown Burlington, I don't have a car. So if I want to redeem, I have to bike to Winooski, which is dangerous with cans and bottles. It's not feasible. And I totally agree that in order for this program to work, folks have to be able to conveniently redeem. And I do believe this bill captures that. The only way to get a redemption center in Montpelier and Burlington, because right now those businesses just.
You're young and healthy. Think about the elderly person with a walker or a cane who is in the same, building, in the same situation. They can't ride their bike to Winooski. They have to take this stuff on the bus with their cane, with their walker.
And I won't read the whole thing. It's a pretty short section though. And 1532 in the bill has a convenience of collection section where it shall ensure that consumers have convenient opportunities to redeem. It goes on to spell out some details, but there's at least 3 points per county, and these are all and conditions, and at least 1 point of redemption for every municipality of 7,000 or more, and redemption centers in designated areas. So there's Mr. Chapman, who deals with plans, can speak.
Is
How
that
you
all
define
those
reach?
little towns, they're all those designated village centers? What's a designated area? And then I'm gonna be quiet because we've got a couple more witnesses and Senator Lyons will be in here. And we will take up committee discussions after we
I would want to pull the book and see, but 24 VSA, chapter 76A, I think it includes all the designated areas. So that would include village centers. But I would want to double that.
I thought there were designated village centers.
Yeah, so there's designated downtown development areas, there's neighborhood development, sorry, not neighborhood development areas. Village centers and new town centers.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 flavors, and
Yeah.
it says how sites of redemption are or will be sited in areas with high population density or located in centers designated under 24 VSA.
Okay.
But there's no guarantee that there would be a redemption center in each one of those categories of,
True.
and they represent, what, 0.3% of the land area of Vermont collectively.
Yeah, well, yes, but that's just one of the anded conditions, right? There's an overarching reasonable convenience requirement. Then it gets more specific, at least 3 points. Then it gets more specific, and it's when it ands the 7,000 or more, ands redemption in areas of high population density or located in
Okay,
centers.
we're gonna let Marcy finish because I've got, I think, 2 more witnesses, no, 3.
Yeah.
And Senator Lyons will be in here. You might drop, and I think maybe what we'll do is we'll finish our witnesses. Might tell Senator Lyons et al. That we're running about 15 minutes late. And then we will come back to this when we finish putting out the bills we need to put out. Okay, so I'm gonna have,
And I'll skip around too.
I will let you go through this, but if you can wrap this up in a couple minutes.
Yeah, I'll be as quick as I can. I just wanted to also say that you've heard that the system needs to be fixed before expansion happens. The bill does this as well. It has a 4-year timeline for the PRO to get up and running and set the systems up, which is longer than any other state that has expanded their bottle bill has given. 4 years is plenty of time, including longer than California and Connecticut, which both just updated their bottle bills in the past couple of years. Here, I was just going to speak specifically to the concerns of some independent redemption centers that are really struggling right now. This is the example of the Trombleys, who had 5 redemption centers in the state, now 4, because they recently closed their Heinsberg Redemption Center because they could no longer afford it. That's in Chittenden County, where I live, and now the residents of Heinsberg have no local place to redeem. So really, this problem is getting worse without modernization of the bottle bill, and it is something we need to address. The Trombleys aren't sure that they're going to be able to keep their other 4 locations open without H-158. They're strongly in support of H-158, which again, this bill just goes far beyond just expanding the containers. It really updates the system, brings it into the modern age, and makes these changes that lots of folks want to see. Also, doubling the amount of containers brings in double the revenue that redemption centers take in, so they can also pay their workers more that way. So just to wrap this part up, we've talked about convenience. I just want to make sure that it's clear that Vermonters are losing convenient access to redemption right now, and we need to do something about it. And H-158 was the carefully crafted compromise to do exactly that. We are saving these small and independently run businesses that provide really crucial services to their communities by passing H-158. So really, if the interest is in increasing consumer convenience, I do believe this is the best way to do it.
So we're increasing the fee 1 cent a can for non-commingled, but I thought we weren't having any non-commingled.
Right, so that's really just kind of a stopgap. I think it'll be about a year that happens until.
So what are we doing to increase, other than the number of bottles? What are we doing to make this financially viable? Are we increasing the handling fee?
So you are.
Yes, okay, that's all I need to hear.
Okay.
175.
That's what you paid upstairs. Yeah, well, we can take that up with whether or not that's highway robbery.
So you heard.
It was 3.5 cents if you were commingled, 4 cents if not. It will be 5 cents if not commingled, so there's an extra penny.
Is that enough? Have they said that is enough to save them?
They actually say that doubling the amount of containers is what they want. Again, it's twice as much revenue as they're making right now, so long as these other things are in place to make them more efficient, like reducing.
Moving out those things.
If you can move them out twice as fast, and you
Exactly.
don't have to pay a couple of people to sort them.
Which
then
is-
that might do it.
In the bill through ensuring that Commerce has. So this is strongly supported by the recyclers, the glass, aluminum, PET, plastic recyclers. You heard from Scott DeFife with the glass packaging
Yes, we did.
yesterday, so I won't go too much into this. But they are the ones that actually recycle these materials, so they do have really accurate data about how much is getting recycled and from where, and they say there's really no comparison in the quality between bottled
Yeah, I
water
think,
and
you don't need to repeat what we heard yesterday.
Right, great. Specifically, glass, huge concern, just to remind you all, 18,000 tons of glass was dumped for 5 years that had been paid to be recycled. And this was considered recycled in Vermont during this time. Meanwhile, all of that glass could have been actually recycled through the bottle bill. And solid waste districts are all different on where they come down here, but there is pretty solid consistency about agreeing that wine should be taken out of the single stream system and added to the bottle bill system because glass is just so costly for the solid waste districts to manage. Some solid waste districts like
That was a swing in their support last year.
right.
in this committee.
Some have concerns about losing plastic and some aluminum, but others like the Northeast Kingdom Waste Management District have said that this wouldn't increase their revenues at all. So they really do come down in different places. I want to point out that yield is something that's really different between single stream and curbside. So this is specifically for glass, but once our materials leave Vermont and end up at the recyclers, the single stream glass is much dirtier, so not as much of it can be turned
Yeah,
into a new
I
product.
think we got that. We saw the pictures
Right.
yesterday. Are the recyclers required to take it? What happens, as we found with plastic and cardboard, that the recyclers say, we have more than we can handle or more than we can sell? Are we then where we were when things got landfilled because we couldn't? I mean, is there any requirement that they buy, I assume, our recycles?
I don't believe there's a requirement, but I do know that this material is really highly sought after. Bottle mill materials, the cleanest in the country, recycled content mandates mean
Clean. The short answer is no.
that
They
value
are not
is
required to buy.
worth 40% more. There are there are recycled content mandates, which means that beverage manufacturers have to use recycled content and they're getting it for bottle bills. I know that MRFs are a concern, and you'll hear from them, so I won't spend too much time on this.
What are MERS?
Our material recovery facilities.
Okay,
We have 2 in the state. And they are
these are
currently
the people
concerned
that are
about.
doing the commingled.
No, they're the folks that are collecting in our single stream recyclables.
Okay, they've got the single stream.
Yep, and
You mentioned that there are requirements or mandates that manufacturers use recycled materials.
Yeah.
What sort of mandates are those?
so state laws in California, New Jersey, Colorado have required that manufacturers use increasing levels of recycled content in their beverage containers.
In their state, that are manufactured in their state.
Right, but California is such a huge economy, it's kind of turning the tide, and the brands themselves, like Coke and other big ones, have made their own pledges to use rising levels of recycled content,
You
which,
see that with paper and cardboard.
right, and right now, industry experts are saying there's no way we're gonna meet these levels because we don't have enough clean recycled material, so that's why I feel very confident that bottle bill material will not stop being profitable. But regarding MRFs, we did ask Chittenden Solid Waste this past fall if the bottle bill expansion would impact the financial viability of their MRF. They said no, because nearly 75% of their material is fiber, like paper and cardboard. It's also impossible to predict right now how this program would impact the MRFs 7, 10, 15 years down the road as this program takes effect. But there is a study provision in the bill that would do a comprehensive cost analysis of how it impacts the MRFs and others before expansion goes into effect.
Are you saying CSWD now supports the bottle mill?
Nope,
No.
we just asked them if it would have a significant financial impact on the Burke, and they said no. So I won't speak for them.
I think there have been discussions, all right.
So again, there's 4 years for producers to set up this new system and 2 years to study it before expansion goes into effect.
I need you to wrap up because we've been through the bill and we're gonna go through it again. I think we've got staff that
Yeah.
will walk us through the
Great.
bill.
Great, so couple more thoughts. The MERS have ability to recoup their losses. It's through increasing their tipping fee. They do this rather frequently, and even the high-end estimates of what they would propose would be increased through an expanded bottle bill is just a few dollars per household per year, so really nothing significant. It really makes sense for MERS to look out for their bottom line, but frankly, a few dollars per household per year does not outweigh the benefits to consumers, redemption centers, grocers, and the environment that would come through expanding the bottle bill. So
That is Beaver's position.
That is Beaver's
I think you may
position.
get another position.
Yeah, so this bill, again, doesn't just expand the bottle bill, it does a lot more, it brings the
Right.
program to the modern age, it has positive impact on the revenue of the state. Vermonters love it, they don't want it going anywhere, but we do need more redemption centers, we need more technology, a better run system.
See that?
Yeah, just to make sure it's getting in there.
Okay, I gotta get to my next witnesses.
We have 4 years to set up this system, so I do believe that's more than enough time and hope that you support the bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Matt Chapman. Okay, yeah. What have you,
Hi, Senator.
hi,
So for the record, Matt Chapman, I am the Director of the Waste Management and Prevention Division within the Agency of Natural Resources.
okay,
All right,
you're the guy in the line.
I'm the guy in the line, so I'm happy to come in. I'll be as succinct as I possibly can with H-158. So the agency supports the modernization provisions associated with H-158, the increases to the ability to collect and the modernization going on with the bottle bill. We're very concerned and don't support the step up in the deposit from 5 to 10 cents. And would prefer seeing it go back to what the Senate passed last year or how the H-158 was introduced in the House, where if these performance objectives that are in the bill are not met, that the agency would report to the General Assembly and that you would take appropriate steps to deal with the deposit. And then lastly, I think we said along that there is a study in here that's going to give a lot of information on how the bottle bill works. In an ideal world, we would have that information before we expand the bottle bill.
Okay, I think you hit a couple things that we've heard.
Sure.
One is the concern that in other states that have done this, it has taken, I think they said California was 7 or 8 years to bring their rate of redemption back to the pre-expansion rate. So to say 1 year, is it 6 months, that there was some disconnect there that was concerning. And the other thing I'm hearing is a concern that we're gonna pull the trigger and the infrastructure won't be in place. And these are private businesses. I don't know how you can require a private business to open somewhere. You can incent them, but just to say we need more redemption centers and we're gonna have more bottles, therefore you need to open. I'm looking for a way, and it was suggested that perhaps, since it's you on the line, that the agency in some way assess whether or not this PRO has whether or not the infrastructure is adequately in place to, to pull the trigger and expand the number of bottles. I think that those were the two concerns I've heard so far, was making sure that convenience, but making sure the infrastructure to make it convenient was there, and making sure that, you didn't prematurely jump that rate.
Sure. So I think starting with sort of the second point first, right, with respect to the
Yeah.
deposit going from 5 to 10 cents. I mean, I think from A&R's perspective, that's problematic, both from respect of the testimony that you've heard, but also, I mean, there are a lot of drivers that may ultimately cause the PRO not to get to those performance measures. The other thing that we're concerned about is that those performance measures are based on redemption. And really what we want is to see people not throwing these materials into the landfill. We don't want all of a sudden the PRO to be arguing against recycling in order so it can get more material into the redemption system. So, I mean, I think that the goals are laudable, but I think having an automatic legal trigger that jumps it from 5 to 10 cents without looking more broadly at things is not the way the agency would propose to go.
Okay.
And I think, again, that can get handled through, frankly, us being required to report back to you and with a set of recommendations. And that was how the bill was introduced in the House and how the Senate passed it last year. And I guess I would add on top of it, if the PRO is not being a good faith player in trying to meet these objectives, we have additional tools that we can require it to do more work, or frankly, civilly enforce against it for not meeting its obligations.
So you can get,
So there are other tools beyond the
Okay.
going from 5 to 10 cents that will allow us to hold the PRO accountable without using that particular mechanism as a tool.
along with that, and we've been trying to figure out what changed, how they got 115 votes in the House. I think that change from not having it be an automatic jump that is not in this bill may be part of the difference.
I think that
Can the agency also report back to us 6 months before the trigger is set to be pulled, or however we need to, so it's in session, that whether or not, in your assessment, the infrastructure is adequate to handle the doubling of the volume?
So I would need to go, so the answer is yes. So just so you know, the way the bill is currently constructed, the agency is required to report in January of 2005 on a sort of systems analysis of the bottle bill, right? So what's it cost, like doing a cost analysis, looking at redemption centers to see whether they're
There.
whether they're getting paid fairly, whether there needs to be a modification in the handling fee. I think that we're very used to in Vermont having brick and mortar redemption centers where things are counted. There's a lot of technology that's being used in other jurisdictions that's a substitute for that. Okay, so
But the question remains, who pays for it?
well, I think the obligation is going to rest with the PRO. So their obligation is ultimately to ensure that there's sufficient collection and that there are appropriate collection points and they're meeting their targets with respect to collection. And again, that's one of the reasons the agency supports the bill, because I think the system that we currently have in place was created 30 years ago. Well, gosh, it's been longer than that actually, and hasn't had the benefit of some of the better ways of constructing recycling programs that we've been doing over the past 15 or so years. So I think the modernization components are incredibly important and will help the bottle bill regardless.
Okay, so if we did something with the trigger and put you, because it seems that the experience in the world is that it's not going If we just wanna double that, the deposit, then we should do it, because unless we are remarkably different than that, we're not gonna go back to the 75 or so percent. And then if you are reporting back, I know, when is your report, the cost benefit?
So the cost benefit report's due in January of 2005, or 2025, excuse me, sorry.
And when does the trigger get pulled? That's 27, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we probably want something more like 26 to just give us, before the trigger gets pulled, to have a report back saying that the PRO has done what we've told them to do. And you say you can enforce if they don't, that we do have adequate recycling centers, that we have a plan for how we're going to upgrade those centers to perhaps not brick and mortar, and that we have an adequate system of pickup. Is that, to pick up from the centers, that the trucks show up when they say they'll show up on a, sometimes there's a blizzard, but it's a general rule. They show up on Wednesday if they're supposed to be there on Wednesday.
Sure.
Senator Burke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Chapman helped us sort it out. That systems analysis report that's due in 25. I don't know if we want to move that off, that all the way to 26. So I'm floating.
No, I'm not moving his systems analysis. I'm just asking
For like an update a year later,
we're still running like,
whatever it is.
it's gonna be at least 3:30, yes.
We also, and Mr. Chapman alluded to it, we didn't have the automatic escalator when we proposed the bill originally. Said it last year. Correct. So there's pre-existing language that doesn't use, to Mr. Chapman's point, a trigger that's based just on redemption volume doesn't acknowledge that there's a lot of other factors besides the nickel versus a dime that could influence the rate at which it works, how well it works.
So if we do something with that automatic trigger, that would make it easier.
From
Okay.
our perspective, that improves stability.
Okay. Okay,
Really quick.
yes.
So I heard you say that you do support modernizing it for the redemption piece, and that you don't support the 10% increase. So how does the administration have the position on expanding the number of materials that would be included in the deposit?
So I don't feel comfortable speaking for the administration. I would say from the agency's perspective, as far as expansion, ideally you would have the systems analysis in place before you make that decision, right? You want the data so you can make an informed decision before the decision is made.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else you think we need?
I think those are the core sort of elements for this consideration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I've got Kim Crosby, and then Jennifer Holiday is, okay, she's up on the Zoom, okay. Tell us who you are, who you represent.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Kim Crosby, and I'm the Director of Environmental Compliance for Casella. Casella is headquartered in Rutland, Vermont, and has been providing solid waste and recycling services in Vermont since 1975. We employ 670 Vermonters. We operate the state's only landfill. We provide curbside waste and recycling services to approximately 63,000 residential and commercial customers in Vermont. We operate the materials recycling facility, or MRF, in Williston through an operating contract with Chittenden County Solid Waste District, which you'll hear from after me. In addition to the recycling facility in Williston, we own and operate the recycling facility in Rutland. Most of the incoming material received at both recycling facilities is mixed paper, which is about 40% of the incoming stream. 3 to 4% of incoming material is PET and aluminum, and about 20% is glass. In 2022, we processed and sent PET, aluminum, and glass to facilities that make beverage containers, which are essentially the same markets that the bottle bill system uses. At our Rutland facility, we send glass by rail to a bottle facility in North Carolina. 90% of the glass that we send to this facility is made into bottles or fiberglass, and the remaining 10% is considered fines. Earlier testimony referencing only 40% of glass collected through single stream is suitable for recycling. I'm not sure where that calculation is coming from, but if we sent material to our glass market that was only 40% suitable, we would not get paid for it. Our end market would likely reject it or back charge us and likely stop accepting it from us. So whether glass is collected through single stream, the bottle bill system, or other separate collection system, glass is expensive to transport because of its weight. The cost involved with transporting glass is why we've continued to support the use of glass in construction projects. Glass can be used as a substitute for virgin sand. It can be produced into foam glass aggregate. It can also be used as a substitute for fly ash in the production of concrete, which creates stronger and longer lasting concrete while reducing carbon dioxide emissions generated from the production of cement on almost a ton per ton basis. It was reported through research conducted by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality that the use of recycled glass into concrete is 5 times more impactful from a climate perspective than going back to bottles or fiberglass. So with the anticipation of the passage of the Universal Recycling Law in 2011, Casella converted our facility in Rutland to process single stream. The Universal Recycling Law requires transfer stations and drop-off facilities to collect recycling, requires recycling receptacles in public spaces, and requires solid waste haulers to provide curbside recycling services to all new and existing customers. The most efficient and economical way for haulers to provide mandatory curbside recycling services is through single stream collection. Single stream is also the most convenient option for Vermonters, and convenience was deemed as one of the most important factors in encouraging Vermonters to recycle more and throw away less. For these reasons, many communities throughout the country have modified their recycling programs to the single stream model. Many Vermonters like the convenience of single stream, which is why we see material that is currently in the bottle bill system at our recycling facilities. So before and after the passage of the Universal Recycling Law, Casella has continued to invest in Vermont's recycling infrastructure to ensure that mandated recyclables are being recycled. We've invested millions of dollars to upgrade our facilities to install technology to improve sortation and the cleanliness of recyclables. We invested $3.4 million to convert our Rutland facility to process single stream. We invested another $1.3 million in 2018 to improve the quality of our paper and glass streams. Most recently, last fall, we invested $1.4 million in the installation of robotics at our facility in Rutland to improve sortation, capture more recyclable material, and compensate for the lack of available labor. Additional investments were made in trucks and containers after the Universal Recycling Law passed to comply with the portion of the law that mandated all haulers provide these services. The PET and aluminum that is being targeted by H-158 may represent a small portion of the overall material we receive. However, these are the most valuable materials that we produce, and their value helps offset the cost of recycling other materials where markets are most volatile, like mixed paper. During the months of October through February, just recently, the value of mixed paper dropped significantly to $0 per ton. In March, it increased to $5. I think it's up to 10 now. When recycling facilities lose more of the valuable materials to the bottle bill system, they must raise their fees in order to make up for the loss in revenue. This loss gets passed on to consumers. We have determined that the cost of recycling could increase to all Vermonters by at least 7%, which equates to about $9.78 per ton to our current tip fee. This increase assumes the deposit for the materials would remain at 5 cents. If the deposit is increased to 10 cents, we assume the increase would be approximately $17 a ton more to our current tip fee. And the exact amount of the increase to Vermonters is difficult to predict, as the value of recyclable commodities changes monthly. While a 7% increase may equate to only a few dollars more at the household level, and may seem insignificant to some, a few dollars more is in addition to all of the other increases households are experiencing. The increase, however, would not be insignificant to those that generate large amounts of recycling, like businesses, schools, hospitals, apartment complexes, municipalities, some solid waste districts, and even state-owned buildings, all of whom are required to recycle by law, and many of which are already suffering financially from inflation. Vermont has a statewide goal to reduce the disposal of solid waste and increase the statewide diversion rate to 50% by 2024. The state's current diversion rate is hovering around 34%. Prior testimony from DSM, who prepared the 2013 systems analysis and the 2018 waste characterization study for the agency, shows that an expanded bottle bill would result in a maximum reduction of landfill waste in Vermont by 1% and would increase bottle bill operational costs by an additional $4 million per year. The data in the report shows that beverage containers, regardless of whether they are covered in the bottle bill, are recycled at a very high rate, and expanding the bottle bill would only have a minuscule effect on the overall diversion rate. Vermonters recycle 72% of mandated recyclables. The redemption rate is around 74 to 75%. And based on testimony I heard yesterday from Bree Deatley, I would question what the real redemption rate is after hearing about the number of fraudulent returns that are entering the system. Shifting material from the single stream system to the redemption system will require additional truck trips or trucks on the road to collect this material. These trucks are often tractor-trailer trucks powered by diesel fuel. Transportation has been determined to be one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. In 2006, DSM conducted a survey of consumers redeeming containers in Vermont and concluded that consumers made 950,000 special trips for a combined mileage of 7.6 million miles per year, costing them $3.67 million based on the mileage rate at that time. We would expect that that number of trips and mileage could increase under an expanded system, as well as the cost, especially considering today's fuel prices. Requiring Vermonters to make additional special trips and adding more trucks on the road to collect this material is not conducive or in line with the goals outlined in the Global Warming Solutions Act. With the focus on climate change, we should be evaluating ways to improve collection efficiencies by reducing the number of trucks on the road, not increasing them. In closing, we urge this committee to support the universal recycling law that was unanimously passed by the legislature in 2012 by not voting to expand the bottle bill system. The systems analysis as proposed in H158 should be conducted to gather current data and then be evaluated before a decision to expand the bottle bill is made. Additionally, based on the number of questions that retailers and some redemption centers have about the plan by the PRO, if feasible, it may make sense for the PRO to draft the plan and have it reviewed by stakeholders to ensure that it will address the issues with the current system before a decision is made to expand. I've heard a few conversations that this bill could be a potential business opportunity for Casella. Casella is not in the redemption business. We operate, and after hearing how unprofitable it is today, I don't think we have any plans to do so. We operate in other states that have bottle bills, and we are not in the redemption business in any of those states. We are in the process of expanding our services into Maryland and Delaware. Delaware also has a universal recycling law, and they used to have a bottle bill in that state. However, when they passed their universal recycling law, they eliminated their bottle bill and focused on single stream recycling. Our business model for recycling is single stream, and we have invested millions of dollars and will continue to invest into that system, not just here in Vermont, but at all our recycling facilities. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? So, paper, cardboard are volatile. Glass is not as volatile, or plastic, because we're talking primarily plastic.
So between the two recycling facilities, we manage glass differently than CSWD does. They're making processed glass aggregate in Williston. We truck ours to a bottle-to-bottle facility.
Okay,
So
where,
we get paid for it. We get paid for it when it comes in, and we get paid for it by the end market.
and it's, you said 70% of yours gets recycled?
90.
90, okay. Gets recycled by the glass,
By our facility,
okay,
by the end market.
yeah,
We send it.
okay. Sandra,
What business is Casella in?
Single stream recycling, solid waste and curbside recycling services.
That's the method that you, the organizational way that you conduct the business you're in, which is, what's the business you're in?
Managing people's solid waste and recycling.
When you in the trash business,
Yeah,
you pick up trash.
yes, we do.
but then they have to
Thankless job
dispose of the
sometimes.
trash.
Pardon?
They have to
What's
dispose
Thankless
of
job
the trash.
sometimes.
They don't just pick it up, they have to do something with
Yeah,
it, okay,
and the public pays for, when they dispose of it, the public.
We don't
Please
necessarily
dispose.
have to pick it up. They could take it to a drop off.
When the bottling companies, about a half a century ago, made a decision that they were going to stop their business model of delivering beverages and picking the empties up. They made a decision that they weren't gonna do that anymore, and they let the public or someone else pick up the trash and the garbage and dispose of it.
What does that have to do with Casella?
That's what you guys do.
We're not a beverage manufacturer.
You pick up the containers
okay.
and
We
dispose
pick up all
of it.
recycling. We handle it all, not just the select cherry
We're
picking
we're talking about
materials.
the bottle bill, not the other things. that-
I've got- Okay, I've got one more witness, and I've got another bill coming in here. We'll continue our discussion. You have one small
Just a
question.
comment. Thank you for picking up trash, because
Thank
this is an
you.
important, very important service
It
to
is.
keep our communities clean. And secondly, I'd love to hear more about Delaware, because I gotta say, that might be the better direction to go in. And
Yeah,
I'd love
I
to-
spoke to somebody from the Delaware Department of Environmental Protection, and
Tomorrow was when people.
And Senator, judging by the hill in my backyard, an awful lot of Vermonters threw their recyclables over the hill. I have lots of
Yeah, that was the plan. The
cans of
bottlers had in
farm
mind.
insecticides I had to ban my children.
That was what the bottlers had in mind.
No,
50
these
years
were
ago.
farm fertilizer, insecticide, there's
yeah.
probably some DDT up there.
well, the bottlers keep making it because we all keep buying it. So if we want to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the other 2 hours reduction and reuse, maybe we should focus on that some
I'm
more
gonna
too.
thank anybody, I'm gonna thank the people tomorrow who go out and pick up the garbage and the
Which
trash.
Casella sponsors a lot of.
Okay, we are going on to our next witness, which is Jen Holiday. I hope she's still, okay. There you are, Jen, welcome, and just tell us who you are, who you represent, and the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. My name's Jen Holiday. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Communications for the Chittenden Solid Waste District. And thank you for asking me to talk to your committee. CSWD, or Chittenden Solid Waste District, we're a municipality, and we oversee solid waste management for Chittenden County. Our mission is to basically help our members reduce and divert as much waste as possible from landfill disposal. And we have a number of facilities to help do that. One that I'll talk about today is the materials recycling facility or recovery facility, whichever you want to choose. It's still a MRF. CSWD built the first single stream MRF in the region about 30 years ago. And we process over 50% of the blue bin material that's generated in the state. So in other words, we're not just processing Chittenden County recyclables, but we're going outside of Chittenden County's. Haulers are coming to us from outside of Chittenden County's, bringing us their blue bin recyclables. We are, our MRF is 30 years old, so we are investing $26 million to build a brand new MRF that will be equipped with modern technology to serve Chittenden County and beyond for the next 30 years. And we hope to have that up and running in 2 years. The concern that we have regarding H-158, which we've expressed in the House and the Senate, is that the expansion includes materials that we're already processing, we're already sending to market to be turned into recycled materials such as beverage containers that will get removed from our system and be placed into the redemption system, particularly aluminum and PET. Glass is a net cost for CSWD. It's very difficult to manage in single stream systems. And we do support policies that remove glass from single stream and continue to divert it from the landfill. So expansion of the bottle bill to include glass is something that we do support. However, expansion that includes these other materials is going to have a net negative financial impact on our recycling system and will result in costing more for Vermonters to recycle. Our estimation is somewhere between $7 and $17 a ton is what that cost would be. And we would have to raise our tip fee. Of course, that would be passed on to the consumers. So I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I just want, it's basically the same issues that Ms. Crosby just talked about. And I think that if the committee is interested in expansion, as I said, CSWD is in support of glass. However, the aluminum and the PET would definitely have an impact on the recycling system. That's all I have for you. If you have questions for me, and I will just add, this committee has H67 before you as well today, and that is something that's very important to solid waste districts. That is the most expensive waste stream we manage. So if you would pass that out, I know that all the solid waste district would be extremely appreciative.
That, we've got two of them, and we're going to move on to them as soon as we finish with this one. So any questions, Senator Bray?
So this is a genuine question. I'm just curious, what is it that's different in the operation of Chittenden Solid Waste District versus NEK, so that Mr. Tomasi doesn't estimate, doesn't sort of model the loss the way that you're modeling a possible loss or increased costs?
I haven't seen Mr. Tomasi's calculations, so I can't answer that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Answer that.
Okay.
Mr. Tomasi will answer, I guess.
It may vary. I have not
I don't
heard
know the
from my
answer.
solid waste district, but I will be contacting him. Okay. Thank you. And thank you, committee. We are going to move on to Adult Protective Services. And then we have another one on household products containing hazardous waste, but Katie McGlynn is here. Jeannie, I don't know how. Let Katie go. Okay.
We looked at the key portion of the
Okay.
bill, which is the expert here. I'm
Okay.
here just to help with any.
And I'm assuming there's a fee in here somewhere.
We have penalties.
Oh, there's financial penalties?
Yes,
Okay.
financial penalty, I said fee.
Okay, so it's not a criminal penalty, so Senator.
Huh? Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Katie McDonough, so Legislative Council. So the bill before you is a bill that revises the existing adult protective services system in Vermont. The testimony that the committee has received is that this program hadn't really been updated in about several decades, 50 years even. So a lot of the changes that are in the bill are to bring it more in line with best practices across the country. In terms of your particular area of focus, section 6913 is language on administrative penalties. We have a section, do you want me to log on to Zoom and pull it up, or do you work on your?
Yeah, probably if you can just put it up, because that way if anyone's watching at home, they
Okay,
can see it.
grab the link here. Oops, I don't have it. Do you mind sending it?
Okay,
Thank you.
we've got it. Okay, so this draft, you two, are you using?
I'm looking, I'm actually looking at the as passed house.
Okay,
It was a big bill, it's 50+ pages.
Okay.
So that's what was sent over from the House. The Senate Committee on Health and Welfare made some changes, but their amendment is instances of amendment, so it's a very short document.
okay.
Okay, I'm logging into Zoom, just bear with me.
Okay. Okay, I may not be leaving for a while.
That's okay, I'm not either until 5.
5 may be inside a while.
Okay, well, let's see.
So we'll be as passed by House.
As passed by House. Okay, let's see if I can share this now.
So where?
It's on the committee page.
It is on the committee page.
That's, I'm looking through it.
I also have a section by section summary because it is sort of a long bill. So if you want more details about the bill, you can look in the summary. But here is the penalty section. So in subsection A, we have an administrative penalty. So whenever the department finds,
So that is.
What page is that?
that is 44.
Page 44. Well, I'm only on 12.
Keep scrolling.
Keep scrolling. Now it's shut down. Come on. Can't do it that fast like this. Okay, just tell us what our.
Okay, so we have a series of several subsections. The first subsection, subsection A, is that whenever the department finds after notice and hearing that a person committed sexual abuse, exploitation of this title, in an amount in excess of $500, the abuse causes grievous injury to or death of a vulnerable adult, or neglect that causes serious grievous injury to or the death of a vulnerable adult, the department may impose an administrative penalty of not more than, and we're striking out 10,000 and inserting 25,000. So that's the first one. In subsection B, this is when a mandated reporter fails to make a required report. In this case, we have, I'm looking at lines 11 through 13. Has willfully violated the provision of this subdivision, the department may impose an administrative penalty not to exceed $1,000 per violation. Previously had been 500.
When was the last time those were updated?
Couldn't tell you. I would say a while, yeah.
Okay.
There is somebody from the department here, so I'm not sure if they'll have a better sense of how those were changed. I'll keep going. For purposes of this subsection, every 24 hours that a report has not been made beyond the period of time requiring reports is a separate violation, and a mandatory reporter shall be liable for an administrative penalty not more than $1,000, updated from 500, for each 24-hour period, not to exceed $25,000. It used to be $5,000. Then in subsection C, So B was when the mandated reporter fails to make a report, but C is when the department finds the mandated reporter willfully or knowingly withheld information, provided false or inaccurate information. The department may impose an administrative penalty not to exceed $1,000 per violation. So that is new language, a new subsection there. So those are your.
Those are pretty hefty penalties. I'm just thinking of people like teachers. What was the story I read? About a kid who had wet pants and a childcare. The teacher went to change him. There was something happened, but the teacher got, somebody else. But you get situations where it's gray or people get caught. They're not sure what to do. Who makes the judgment that you're going to get fined $1,000? I mean, there's no court here. Is there an appeal to this?
So the department is the entity that is making those decisions. These are, for the most part, existing penalties.
Right. We're
so-
more than doubling those.
Yes. So I might suggest that you hear from the department as to how it works
Okay.
now.
Okay. Because some of them are hefty, and I guess the word is knowing.
Yeah, I mean, in the subdivision, subsection C, it's a willful or knowing, so it's not just.
And this is vulnerable adults, so this isn't gonna do anything about the recent stories of schools that pass a sexually abusing teacher, just fire him, and he goes through 3 or 4 schools, and possibly daycares.
Correct, this is individuals over 18 years of age.
Okay, so this is adults.
Do we have any idea how often these fines, like this $5,000 fine, had been enacted or occurred?
I think we've got a witness from the department, and we'll put him on next. There's John. Jenny, can we do John next?
Pardon me?
Can we do Mr. Gordon?
No, go ahead.
Okay,
I'm fine, and it just, he'll talk about the investigation, and he'll talk about the appeals process and how all of that happens.
okay. So Mr. Gordon, welcome to Senate Finance. These are all new people in here. Just introduce yourself for the record. We represent, I've gathered the department, and fill us in on how these fines are, penalties are determined, administered. Is there an appeal? They were hefty, but we're more than doubling the heftiness of them. So just fill us in.
Sure. My name is John Gordon. I'm the director of the Adult Protective Services Program for the state of Vermont. Starting with the first part of the question, which would have to do with the process, as it were. I will say, actually, I'm going to skip ahead, and I will say that all of this is somewhat theoretical because, to my knowledge, there have not been any fines levied as a consequence of maltreatment in the time that I've been with Adult Protective Services, which has been since 2016. But if the department were to choose to impose a fine, then that would be, it would have to occur after a recommendation, leaving aside the mandatory reporter section. It would have to be after a recommendation of substantiation had been accepted. So Adult Protective Services makes the recommendation after completing an investigation. That recommendation then goes to the commissioner or the commissioner's designee, who either accepts or rejects that recommendation. At that point, someone who's aggrieved by this recommendation, typically the alleged perpetrator, would have the opportunity to have a hearing in front of the commissioner or designee. Typically, those are handled by the deputy commissioner before a recommendation would be accepted. After a recommendation is accepted, the alleged perpetrator would have a opportunity to have an appeal at the Human Services Board. And further, after, if the Human Services Board upholds a decision to accept the recommendation, if the Human Services Board upholds that decision, then the alleged perpetrator could appeal to the Vermont Supreme Court. So that's the sort of the case.
The appeal system.
Yes.
These are
So-
hefty fines. I'm assuming that they are very serious issues. Why are they dealt with in the criminal system? Why would they go through your department? I mean, neglect, sexual abuse, those are crimes. Why would it go through, and to have that kind of a penalty? What would go through you that shouldn't be going through the criminal? Why would they go through the department rather than go to court?
Well, there's a couple of differences. One is there are many of the definitions of maltreatment that are in this statute, Title 33, Chapter 69, are found in the criminal definitions under Title 18 as well. Not all of them are. Some of the maltreatment as defined in this statute, this section, are not found in the criminal. The other difference would be that within the criminal process, the standard that is held to make criminal finding is beyond reasonable doubt, and under this, it's the civil process is a preponderance level, so it's a different level. In practice,
Preponderance is below clear and convincing, right? Yeah.
Preponderance is below clear and
Yeah,
convincing.
it is the lowest level.
Preponderance, and then it's clear and convincing, and then beyond reasonable doubt. What we find in practice, a lot of our cases, we do make recommendations to the criminal, to law enforcement. Some of those are picked up, many of those are not. We also maintain the adult abuse registry for cases that we substantiate in order to try to keep folks who have been substantiated from working in the field. Again, some cases on the criminal side are also placed on the adult abuse registry. It's a very narrow band that falls under. Many of them are charged as something else. And when this portion of the bill was looked at and drafted, it was considered that those fines were put in place several decades ago, and it was thought to bring it up to date basically by inflation.
Okay. Committee questions for anybody? Okay, Senator Lyons, anything to add?
No, I think you've heard it's adult protective services, so we're talking about people who are vulnerable, adults, and they could be in any specific location or facility. And this bill is an update of some very old language, so it's good.
Okay, committee.
And our committee does have a small amendment, and then
Is it gonna touch
another
the money?
amendment. We have a double.
It's not touching the money.
Huh?
We don't care.
It has nothing to do with money.
Doesn't do with money, we don't care.
Oh, good.
Committee, I've lost my motion maker.
I will move to report favorably H 171.
Okay, Senator Chittenden has moved that we report H 171 favorably. Senator Ron Hinsdale is with us. So, any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. I am seeing that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 2. Okay. You want to report it? Report it, okay. You're just gonna have to say we concur. All right, okay, thank you. And then we've got another one, but that's Michael, and he is coming back. We got that on the agenda. Not till, 3:30, so
Yeah, I'll see if you can come back.
maybe we get Michael. That's household products containing hazardous waste. I thought that was Ginny Lyons' bill. No? We've done everything else in there.
Natural resources.
It might be. Natural resources, it is, it's 67.
Place.
Motion. You're as confident as you are.
Yeah, lost.
You do it with such grace.
Yeah, well,
Okay. 2.1, I assume is what we're looking at.
67 now.
Yes, and we're waiting to see if we can get Michael because we're half out.
Let's look at this one.
Talking about it. Is this how to walk through the directions at all? I can't remember.
No, we have not seen this at all. It just came out, right?
Yes.
I thought it came out of health and welfare. We've done all the other.
If you want,
This is something else I can't throw out anymore.
oh, no, that's not the way we're looking at the universe. This is a part, I can actually grab my folder and give you.
I think we can all, I think we can read it.
Okay, well, the short of it is that household hazardous waste, there are household chemicals that we have when they get to waste transfer stations. They end up, they are a hazard for people working there. And they're also, when they get to landfills, they're a hazard. And one of the hazards include that you don't want to, those materials should be quote unquote disposed of properly.
Okay, but everything is underlined. Michael, come on up. My first question is, everything is underlined, but I didn't think you could throw out batteries now anyway.
So it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
That's what I figured.
The landfill ban for batteries is, I have to read it to you because
Is
there's
that
like,
good?
there's 2 different subdivisions. And I don't remember exactly.
By way of encouragement to the committee, the solid waste districts are supporting the.
Well, that's helpful.
This is the division of complexity. There was a proposal, and I think it came from the agency a couple of years ago to just ban all batteries, but that didn't get all the way through.
There was an issue with the making you hold on. I was on health and welfare to the little tiny round batteries, which were choking or they were fat batteries. They were fairly likely that some kids might swallow them
Like candies.
like candies. And yeah, I mean, we're talking kids that eat Tide Pods. I mean,
So these are the battery types that are banned from landfill disposal: lead acid batteries, and then nickel cadmium batteries, small sealed lead acid batteries, non-consumer mercuric oxide batteries, and any other battery added by the Secretary of Fire.
does anybody who's not a chemist know what those batteries are as compared to I take them out of my flashlight or I take them out of,
These.
I know what the buttons things are.
And
Those
then
are my little candles.
there is an extended producer responsibility program for what are called primary batteries. And those have a definition. It's a little non-intuitive. Let's find that.
Senator Lyons would know what these are.
So a primary battery means a non-rechargeable battery weighing 2 kilograms or less, including alkaline, carbon, zinc, and lithium metal batteries. And then there's 4 things that it is or not. Pardon?
2 kilograms?
2
I
kilograms.
have a kilogram scale. Everybody has a kilogram scale.
That's the type they use to operate electric fences.
So
what are we doing? I mean, it might be easier to say, what don't we recycle, or is this just taking us to recycle everything?
no, this is a extended producer responsibility program
Okay.
for consumer products that are still in the receptacle that they were sold in, that have hazardous waste properties or are gas cylinders. And so, or certain gas cylinders, I should say.
Okay.
It does not include refillable gas cylinders between.
Is this the stuff I use in my barbecue? Is that a refillable gas?
That's a refillable gas
Yeah,
cylinder. A non-refillable gas cylinder between 1 pound and 50 includes things like fire extinguishers, helium, carbon dioxide, pressurized gas, spray
Okay.
foam.
Okay,
So that type of gas cylinder, the refillable ones for your propane, they already effectively have a take-back program. But what doesn't have a take-back program are the small little gas that you use for your camp stove.
okay,
So
yeah,
those refillable gas cylinders up to 1 pound are going to be part of this program.
okay. And I,
So what does this cover? It covers that consumer product sold in the receptacle, and the hazardous material remains in the receptacle, and it is characteristic of a hazardous waste as ANR defines hazardous waste under the hazardous waste rules.
the receptacle is the battery, not the packaging the battery comes in.
No, the receptacle is the container.
Yeah, the container, or it's not, if it comes in a cardboard package or bubble wrap, it's not that.
Right.
Yeah,
It's what actually contains that hazardous material. So a battery is accepted. It's not going to be part of this program,
okay,
right? Because batteries are already, there's already a EPR program for batteries. And what else is excluded is generally what the state already has EPR programs for on page 4. Mercury lamps, mercury thermostats, architectural paint, covered electronic devices, pharmaceutical drugs. Those all have an EPR or take-back program of some kind. And then citronella candles and flea and tick collars, they technically are hazardous, but they are a risk or pose a threat that is low enough that they don't need to be dealt with.
citronella candles?
It is technically a pesticide.
True, how about, I assume citronella oil that,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
So, and
Gives me a
then
headache, so I don't use it.
pesticides are also accepted because there is currently a program that the Agency of Agriculture runs where they pay solid waste management districts for their collection of pesticide products. Now, there has been some concern over the years that that agency program hasn't been working as well as it could. And the Agency of Ag is committed to working with the solid waste management districts to effectively pay them more for what they're doing in the collection.
So all the mosquito spray, wasp spray, all of that is supposed to go to the hazardous waste collection?
Yes, you're not supposed to dispose of that in mixed solid waste, innocent solid.
So where is that?
And what's the financial impact sent to the building here?
There's a section in this bill that requires a report recommending a fee for what the manufacturer organization would pay to register. And that is on page
So this is a fee to the manufacturer.
Page 23. As on or before January 15, 2024, A&R reports to you, the General Assembly, a recommended fee for the registration of stewardship organizations under the covered household hazardous
But
product.
that isn't a fee. I mean, it just says they recommend it.
I'm not the one that makes the
I
decision
know,
to send
I
it.
know.
It's like a deposit.
Can we say this has the minimus or no?
But I want him to, because he does it.
But otherwise, the cost of this program is absorbed by the stewardship organization, just like you were discussing with the bottle bill. And the collection is free, so any person, any person under this bill is called the covered entity. Any covered entity can bring a covered household hazardous product to collection site and dispose of it for free.
Okay.
They don't have to pay a deposit, they don't get one back.
There's no deposit in the system.
This works.
Right.
Tires work. And nobody else is presently collecting and making money off of recycling.
No, this is so I think Jen Holiday just said, it's probably the most expensive waste stream for the solid waste management entities to
Okay.
manage. In addition, they don't, even though there's the mandate on not disposing of household hazardous waste, it does get disposed of. You'll see in the findings that it costs around 2.4 million, 2.2 to 2.4 million for the swimmies to manage this waste stream.
Household hazardous waste. Now, the other day, we were told that was garbage. No, it's not hazardous. That's household waste.
Right.
This is hazardous waste.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, hazardous would be high.
Hazardous waste, but people still dispose of it in the landfill, and there's about 855 tons of it that still go into the landfill.
Is it the work garbage?
Yeah.
So this program,
Send garbage to the landfill.
the program's intended to shift the cost from the swimmies, which are your municipal entities, to the manufacturers, and to reduce the amount of these materials that are going into landfills.
Okay, so there's a proposal for a fee. Any questions on,
Interesting parallels with this.
this is fairly minor. It is gonna have minimal impact on people. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the proposal that somebody proposed?
Yeah, I'm sure. Too many things, too many irons in the fire at the
Yes.
moment to make sure, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't think we changed it in.
No, there were amendments to 67.
Yeah.
Right.
They were minor.
All right, revision of stewardship goals.
Right.
Yeah, and you're coming, we're proving it as it came to us, so it should come to us with your amendments attached.
And you did do a strike all because of industry concerns, but I have it here somewhere side by side that I can give you to
Yeah, we
show.
have the side by side.
You do?
Ah,
Did I give that to you, Jill? I don't think I did give you.
okay, then maybe it's Katie's, the last one that has
Right.
side by side.
But I have done it already, and I can send it to Jill. It's
I
not,
don't think we need it.
Okay.
And we've got, the only thing in our jurisdiction here is a proposal that they propose
They
a
were,
fee.
a report on a recommended fee.
So Senator Bray,
So I would move that, and finance report favorably 867.
has,
When it, or when it
no,
is
no, we're not
recommended
amending it.
or
It came
as it
as
came.
presented to us. It came to us as the bill with the attachments. And unless you change that fee, it doesn't matter.
He came with an amendment with the.
No, there is no fee on it. There's a report that would recommend a fee.
So it has no financial impact.
Yes,
So if, for people's information, the draft, the amendment from natural to, oh, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong one.
did you change the fee?
No,
Okay,
no.
then we are voting to say that this bill, in no matter what form it has been presented to us, has no impact on the fees of the state. Is that your motion?
Well, it's to report favorably, 867.
Thank you.
As we see.
So
I'm not trying to.
I think it's draft point 2.1, isn't it?
it should be draft 3.1 that you're.
3.1, okay.
And just, uh,
I've got 2, I don't have 3.
well, you're probably looking at the wrong version that was posted to the.
That's
Senate
what,
Natural
that's
Committee
the
website.
one we've got.
3. There was minor changes between 2.1 and 3.
Okay, so your motion is for 3.1, which we haven't seen.
Yes, Madam Chair.
3.1 dated.
It's dated 4/28/23.
And it made no changes to the proposed fee.
Right, and just to reiterate, the JFO fiscal note says no revenue or budget impact from passage of this legislation is estimated at this time.
We could do that with.
That's what the reporter's gonna say.
Okay, I have a motion to approve 3.1. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No. I've got that as 601. Okay, thank you. Committee, we are going to take a 10-minute break and then come back and maybe have some discussion about the bottle bill.
Senator Breyer, reporter.
Senator Bray can be the reporter, yeah, whether or not you want to. You gave us this mess.
We're cleaning up.
So
We gotta talk to the secretary on this. Yes, we'll apply for